Greetings. Before we get started, I'd like to give a big thank you to the Kaufman Music Center for contributing footage from the premiere of composer Andy Akio's Be Loud, Be Loved, Belonging, featuring an amazing performance by the CDF-funded, Grammy-nominated Wind Quintet Imani Winds. Inspired by the sound of 2019 protest by immigrant detainees at the Metropolitan Detention Center, this piece was originally workshopped with a group of incarcerated young men at Rikers Island. We hope you enjoyed this performance highlighting the Kaufman Music Center and Imani Winds, two CDF-funded institutions. Let's do a quick sound check. If you can hear me, please click the raised hand button at the bottom of your screen. Okay, great. Welcome to the fiscal 2026 Cultural Development Fund application webinar. I'm Audrey St. Clair. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the Assistant Commissioner of Program Services at the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. I will turn on my camera so that you can see me. I am a Black woman with brown skin, short curly hair, and a floral top and Black blazer. As an employee of the City of New York, I acknowledge with gratitude the ancient and current stewards of the lands and waters we currently know as the 5 boroughs which have been cared for over millennia by Lenape, Canarsie, Lakawe, Wappinger, Atinacoke, and Schaghticoke people. We also recognize that New York City has one of the largest urban Native American indigenous populations in the United States. I'll turn my camera off. My fellow presenters and DCLA program staff behind the scenes will work together to present this webinar and answer your questions. This seminar will provide an overview to guide you on submitting an eligible application to the Department of Cultural Affairs for fiscal year 2026. Please note that CDF grants are awarded through a competitive process. Today's webinar is designed to help you compete with nearly 800 other applicants. We hope you will implement the information to write a compelling cultural proposal detailing how you will serve New York City in alignment with your organization's mission. Also note that previous funding is not a guarantee of future funding. We encourage you to do your best. If you have not done so already, we suggest you download the CDF guidelines, the CDF application worksheet, and the budget worksheet, which can all be found on our applying page. We've included those links in the chat for this webinar. These documents will be referenced throughout the presentation, and we will go into more depth about how they can be used. Next slide. A note on accessibility. We've created this presentation with accessibility in mind. For a live transcript of this webinar, please click on the closed caption icon at the bottom of your window. A copy of this presentation that is accessible by screen readers may be requested via email to disabilityfacilitator@culture.nyc.gov. You can also find this email in the chat. And as mentioned before, the application worksheets can be downloaded from our website. They contain the complete text of the application, both questions and instructions, as well as a budget template. We'd like to let all attendees know that this event will be recorded. This webinar will be posted with closed captioning on DCLA's YouTube channel in the coming days. DCLA will link to this video from our website and may use all or part of the recording in the future or authorize others to use it for non-commercial purposes consistent with our mission. If you do not wish for your name to be included in this recording, please direct all communications to cdfhelpdesk@culture.nyc.gov rather than using the Q&A feature of this presentation. Once we have gone over the webinar agenda, which will be in the next 2 slides, please use the Q&A function found at the bottom of your screen for questions. Behind the scenes, we will monitor your questions throughout the webinar and reserve time to answer them in batches. Next slide.
¿Tiene alguna pregunta en español? Puede pedir asistencia en español enviando un email al helpdesk al cdfhelpdesk@culture.nyc.gov. Su pregunta será contestada por uno de los program officers que hablan español lo más rápido posible.
Next slide. We've divided this presentation into several sections. My colleagues Ladan Hamadi-Tusi and Claudia Arzino will give you an overview of the FY26 CDF grant cycle. They'll share goals and recent outcomes of the CDF process, discuss City Council support, and how it may relate to your FY26 CDF application, discuss guidelines and eligibility, and review the online application form. We will pause for questions throughout and will hold time at the end to answer any outstanding questions. If your query is related to any of the aforementioned areas, please hold until the applicable section to ask your question, as it will likely be covered. If you have a question that is specific to your organization or behind-the-scenes program team, our behind-the-scenes programs team will answer you directly. If your question is more broadly applicable, we will respond to it live during the webinar for all to benefit from your question, so don't be shy. We strongly suggest that you stay for this entire presentation. I am now proud to turn the webinar over to our Commissioner, Ms. Lori Cumbo.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So happy to be here with all of you today. And I just want to welcome all of you. You all are the best cultural community on the planet. And I'm so excited about the incredible work that you do. I'm Lori Cumbo, Commissioner of the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. And it is my honor to welcome you to the launch of the fiscal year 26 Cultural Development Fund application. Yes! So much work went into getting to this moment. And in a few moments, you'll see the materials prepared by DCLA's programs unit. They stand ready to assist you in applying for funding from the city. This is an incredible team that cares deeply about our cultural sector, and they will be your guides throughout this entire process. So do not hesitate to reach out, ask questions to learn more. I also want to thank all of you for your attendance today and for the work that you do, especially now. I'm thankful for the work that you do. Our city is such a vibrant hub for arts and culture because of you. You are an essential strength to the economy and the health of our communities. That's why this city is proud of its record-setting investments in our arts sector this year. We have passed the largest cultural budgets in New York City's history. We are here to help in a variety of ways. And what you're about to hear about CDF is an important step to completing the application. So I applaud you for participating, wanting to learn more, and how to submit the most competitive application possible. We're thrilled to continue to deepen and expand our support to organizations of all sizes through the CDF process, and we continue to refine and improve this process. We've engaged with so many of you in recent years as we've rolled out reforms and new systems around CDF. And your feedback and active involvement has made this program better, stronger, and more equitable. So thank you so much for your input, your feedback, past and future. We hear you. We are listening. We are taking all of your emails, your phone calls. Many of you are testifying at hearings. All of that is important to informing and creating a better CDF process. So please keep it coming. It all goes into the evaluation of our work. I look forward to hearing about your amazing projects and sending awards as soon as we can. And this is very important. Consider submitting an application to serve as a CDF panelist this year. We need your voices, your experiences, and we want to hear from you. It's a great opportunity to contribute your expertise and participate in this extraordinary public funding experience. Information about how to apply will be shared later in the webinar. Thank you all. I'm passing you off to the very good hands of the DCLA programs team, and I look forward to hearing about the incredible programs that each of you are doing in all 5 boroughs. Thank you for your service, thank you for your work, and thank you for making New York City the greatest city in the entire world. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Cumbo. I will now pass it to my colleague, LaDan.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Audrey, and thank you, Commissioner Cumbo. Hello, my name is Ladan Hamidi Tusi. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the co-directors of the Program Services Unit here at DCLA. Thank you again for joining today's webinar. I'm going to turn my video on briefly to do a quick visual description for accessibility purposes. I am a woman of Southwest Asian descent. I wear glasses, I have long brown hair, and I'm wearing sort of purple cardigan today that you may not be able to see. And I've got our very official DCLA blue and white logo background in my Zoom view today. So thanks again. I'm going to turn my video off. We'll continue with the rest of the presentation. Okay. We can go to the next slide, I think. So DCLA will accept proposals in every artistic discipline and from all areas within New York City for all services that take place within the 5 boroughs and within the city's fiscal year 26. That's July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. The fundamental requirement for all proposals is that they represent a cultural activity of recognized quality that is accessible to the New York City public during the grant period. Funded services can be as different as the organizations providing them, but they will all have a common commitment to public service and public participation. Next slide, please. So on the screen is a table that's showing you the 26 CDF grant cycle. The application became available on Monday, March 31st, and the deadline to submit is Thursday, May 8th at 5 p.m. There are no exceptions to this deadline. Please ensure that you do not miss it. So what happens once the CDF applications are submitted? DCLA program staff review the applications and confirm that each applicant's borough, discipline, and FY23 income are correctly indicated. We also check that all applicants are eligible and make sure that all of the required supplemental materials were submitted. And after the applications are confirmed as complete and apportioned to a panel, they are submitted for the panelists to review. As the commissioner mentioned, we are accepting submissions for prospective panelists through our website. Please do consider participating as a panelist. You are the peers in the peer panel review. Panelists have a considerable experience in the arts and cultural sector in New York City, and you can submit yourself at the link that we're going to put in the chat right now. So DCLA's budget is confirmed around the beginning of the fiscal year on July 1st. Panels are going to convene over the summer and into the early fall. Once they conclude, funding recommendations will be made according to the application's budget category and panel score percentile. The commissioner then reviews and approves funding allocations, and notifications will be sent. You'll get an email notice in their late fall or early winter, we hope. Further paperwork is required of grantees, and then also typically if you're funded, 80% of an award is paid as an initial payment and 20% upon completion of services once you submit your final report, though payment schedules may vary in some instances. Grantees are required to report on CDF-funded activities every year. Online funnel reporting forms become available around the end of the grant period, which is, again, the city's fiscal year, around mid to late June. And CDF final reports for FY26 will be due no later than August 3rd, 2026. Next slide, please. So we're proud that New York City is the largest municipal arts funder in the country, and the competitive score-based peer panel facilitated CDF process helps us realize our mandate to support a cultural community that reflects our city's immense diversity and truly serves each resident. As this is a competitive process, funding is not guaranteed year after year outside of a multi-year grant with a renewal baseline funding commitment. Our values of accessibility, equity, adaptability, advocacy, and accountability guide the CDF process to ensure fair and equitable distribution of CDF funds. So a little bit about the current year, the most recent cycle that completed. In FY25, DCLA proudly awarded $59.3 million in grants for 1,078 cultural organizations across the 5 boroughs of New York City. That was distributed through the Cultural Development Fund, obviously. And as part of that total, additional funding was provided to organizations operating in areas with the lowest median incomes and highest poverty rates. Organizations also bringing more cultural programming to English language learners, and organizations as providing deeper cultural engagement to people with disabilities. So if you'd like to learn more about the CDF policies, please visit the DCLA website. Next slide, please. So I'm going to take a quick pause about the CDF application and our process to give you a little bit of a sort of intro or primer on an overview of the city council funds and how they are allocated through our agency. So the Department of Cultural Affairs is a mayoral agency, and we work closely with our partners in City Council to ensure compliance, inform policy, and administer funds, among other work. The New York City Council consists of an elected representative from each of the 51 council districts comprising the 5 boroughs. You can visit the City Council website to identify the council members for your district where you provide services, as well as where you're based, if you do work outside of where you're based. And you can be in touch with their offices to learn more about any unique requirements they may have. For your convenience, the link to the City Council website is included in the chat. The support and partnership of the City Council, its speaker, and its Cultural Affairs Committee is critical to our funding process. They devote considerable funding to culture throughout the 5 boroughs, so it is recommended that you keep them informed of your events and programs, both to seek funds and to report on your activities. DCLA administers several different and distinct funds for cultural activities. To be eligible for any council support that is administered by DCLA, your organization must submit both a City Council discretionary funding application, and that's their general application, and that was due in February. And if you'd like that money to be administered by the Department of Cultural Affairs, because you're already applying to us for funding, you have to then submit a complete and eligible fiscal year 26 CDF application. The CDF application is required for any grants our agency administers. Obviously, if you're not a CIG, but everyone else. And if you don't submit this application, your organization is not eligible to receive any City Council funds distributed through DCLA in this fiscal year, though it is possible still to receive those funds administered through a different city agency. Next slide, please. So City Council discretionary support administered through the Department of Cultural Affairs usually takes one of 2 different forms. First, we have what we call member item support, and then we have the council initiative support. In this slide, I'll explain the member item awards, and in the following slide, we'll discuss the 5 initiatives. Each individual member of the City Council may designate cultural organizations for support in their council district, which is known as member item support. Member because council member. When these member items are administered through DCLA, through one of these general types of designations, they get included with any CDF award that you're granted through the panel process, and so therefore must support the project proposed in your CDF application. It would get combined into a CDF award. Next slide, please. In addition to discretionary support for CDF activities, the City Council has created a number of distinct initiatives which provide single-year support for specific purposes. For fiscal year 2025, these included CASA, the Coalition of Theaters of Color, the Cultural Immigrant Initiative, SUCASA, and ART, a Catalyst for Change, Anti-Gun Violence Prevention. And while the City Council designs these initiatives and designates who will receive funds under them, our agency administers them. Unlike member items, these initiative-funded projects cannot be the same as any CDF-funded activities, so do not include them in your CDF application. Again, to be eligible for any City Council support administered through DCLA, whether for CDF activities or for one or more of the council initiatives, you are required to complete both the FY26 CDF application and the council's discretionary funding application, which was due in February. The discretionary application is not required if you are only applying for CDF funds through the panel process. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pause here and answer some questions that have been flagged for me. As a summary, we went through the CDF program overview in this last section. We talked about a few of the outcomes from the current FY25 CDF process, and we talked about City Council support. So let's see what questions have come up. And I'm going to turn my camera on for this time. Okay. So the first question for me to answer live says, how stable are the DCLA funds for existing grants and FY26, given what is transpiring in Washington and the impact on federal funding to New York City? That's a really kind of complex question. Obviously, there's a lot of unknowns about what's happening in Washington and the impact of federal funding to New York City, but the Department of Cultural Affairs CDF grant is not funded by any federal money. So it is not, there would not be any direct impact. And so all of our funds are always pending the stability of the agency and the city's budget, but the CDF is not funding any, there's no federal funding that is supporting that. It's all city taxpayer dollars. So the next question is, DCLA is hoping to send out FY26 CDF notification in the late fall / early winter. Would that be in calendar 2025 or 2026? We are hopeful that we will be able to send out notification much earlier than we have in the last couple of years. We know that's a big issue for everyone, and it is for us as well. It's one of the things that we're working on really hard. So we're very hopeful that we will be able to complete the panel process and be able to send out notification of the outcome before the end of this calendar year 2025, but it is still, it remains to be seen, but that's our goal. That's what we mean, so that's our goal. All right, next question says, do CDF panelists need to be residents of New York City if they currently work for a New York City cultural organization and have significant experience in the New York City cultural sector? No, you don't need to be a resident of New York City to be a panelist, but you do obviously have to have expertise and knowledge of the field and the sector. And so if you work for an organization and you have significant experience, but you just happen to live in, you know, Hudson Valley or somewhere else that's not near the 5 boroughs, that's okay. We'll definitely have, and then all of the panels are virtual on Zoom, so you can be able to participate that way. Just can't participate from outside of the country. All right, next question for this says, if awards won't be announced until late fall, early winter, should planned activities under the grant not start until after that? This would be for a series of events that is scheduled to start in early fall. So maybe those activities would not be appropriate. No, and I think we're going to get to this a little bit later in the webinar, but obviously anything that is taking place within the eligible grant period, which is the city's fiscal year, is July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026, any of those things can be funded. And yes, if you're applying for something that happens in the summer or early fall, you're probably going to need to start your programming and maybe even complete it before you find out about the outcome of this grant process. Planned grant activities do not need to start after notification. In fact, we fund a lot of things that happen in the early part of the fiscal year before notification goes out. But we'll talk a little bit about that more later in the seminar. Next question. To clarify, what is the link between the city council member and the CDF application? Okay, so that's only a link if you are interested in receiving money through the city council. So if you want your city council member to give you any money, there's a link. If you don't really, or if you're not interested in the city council sort of source of funding, there's no link at all. Though, if you are interested in city council funding, there's a link between them, which is that if you get funding through the council money, if your council member decides to designate funds for your activity and they do it as one of these member items that are sort of, it's a local or it's youth programming or something else that's again gets attached to a CDF grant. So if you get funded, you will get it as part of your total award, and it should be for the same thing that you propose to do in your CDF application. But if you have more questions specifically about what you're thinking about, please contact your program officer or the help desk so we can get a little bit more about that. But CDF application is its own thing. That's our process. And then if there are city council funds that potentially are getting administered through our agency for those eligible organizations, it might get added to your award. So apply for the same thing. If it's for one of the 5 initiatives, that's a totally different thing. And those are separate from CDF. All right. I'm going to say, I think maybe for the interest of time, I'm going to pause the question period for now, and we're going to keep moving. Thanks all for all the great questions. Keep on asking them, and we're going to continue on. Next slide, please. Okay, so the following are the basic requirements for eligibility for CDF funding. Your organization must be either a not-for-profit arts and cultural organization or a not-for-profit organization for which arts and culture is a component of a broader mission. You must have successfully delivered arts and cultural services in New York City for the last 2 consecutive years. You need to be based in New York City and be able to demonstrate administrative and programmatic operations within any of the 5 boroughs of New York City. And your administrative address is primarily determined by the address listed on your IRS 990 for the fiscal year ending in 2023. Also with the organization's 501c3 letter and other publicly available information taken into consideration. But the primary determination is the address on your 990. You must also possess a unique Federal Employment Identification Number, or EIN. You are required to be certified as tax exempt under the Internal Revenue Service Code, Section 501c3, or be an incorporated not-for-profit that uses a DCLA pre-approved New York State Incorporated tax-exempt fiscal sponsor. Only not-for-profit organizations are eligible to apply, regardless of whether they use a fiscal sponsor. Additionally, you must be incorporated in New York State as a not-for-profit organization no later than the organization's fiscal year ending in 2023. Finally, you need to be compliant with all annual state and federal filing requirements for not-for-profit organizations, including the New York State Charities Bureau filings. Organizations whose incorporation dates are in FY24 or FY25 are not eligible for this cycle. Just realized my camera is still on. You don't need to see me while I'm talking there. I'm continuing on. Next slide, please. Last thing I'll mention about that is if you are one of those organizations that is not yet eligible, if you're interested in support, you can explore the DCLA ReGrant program administered by the local arts council in your borough. And there's contact information for that on our website. So crucially, if you have not provided services in arts and culture in both of the last 2 years in New York City and cannot demonstrate related income and expenses, you're not eligible to apply in FY26. Applicants can also not be individual artists or unincorporated artist collectives. There are DCLA ReGrant funds administered by local arts councils on our behalf that are dedicated to individual artists, as I just mentioned. Again, you must be incorporated as a not-for-profit. Any other type of incorporated entity, including an LLC or a limited liability corporation, a B Corp, that's a benefit corporation, S corporations, limited partnerships, none of these are eligible, even if they apply with a fiscal sponsor. The following types of organizations are also not eligible to apply: parent-teacher associations or organizations, nonprofit organizations with chapters, offices, branches, or general activity in New York City, but that are administratively based outside of New York City. Members of the DCLA's Cultural Institutions Group, obviously that's a different funding stream. Programs of city, state, or federal agencies, including component units of the City of New York. Libraries or degree granting institutions, including schools, colleges, and universities. And a note on this bullet point: if your organization is closely affiliated with one of these types of institutions, you should contact DCLA prior to applying to determine eligibility. And finally, organizations that were previously funded but that are not in compliance with DCLA's previous grant reporting requirements are not eligible to apply. If you have more questions about your organization's eligibility, you can take our eligibility quiz. We're going to link that in the chat. It's also on our website. And if you have further questions about that even after taking the quiz, which is just a sort of a snapshot, please make sure to contact your program officer if you have one, or the help desk if you don't have one, well in advance of the May 8th deadline. And you can find that help desk email again in the chat or on the DCLA website, and it's in the guidelines. Next slide, please. So we do consider applications from organizations whose primary mission is other than arts and culture. They are typically social and/or multi-service organizations, religious institutions, or organizations providing general non-arts education. We refer to these as non-arts and culture organizations. If you are an organization whose mission is to provide arts education, that's not you. This is for general non-arts education people. So if you are a non-arts and culture organization, you must have offered documented arts and cultural programming over the past 2 years, provide written proof of any annual filing exemptions, enter the budget for your arts and cultural activities in the application, and submit your full organizational budget as a separate supplemental template. Your application will be reviewed based on the portion of your FY23 operating income that relates to your arts and cultural activities. It is imperative that you have separate financial and programmatic information available for the cultural component of your organization for all fiscal years since fiscal 2023. If you're not sure if your organization has this, please confirm with your bookkeeper or whomever does this work for you that you can provide the required information prior to the May 8th deadline. Next slide, please. So please note some specific policies regarding CDF funding. Organizations may request support for a single project only. No more than 75% of the total project costs may come from DCLA, and if funded, organizations are expected to complete all programming as proposed, regardless of the amount awarded, also regardless of the timing. That's what we talked about earlier. Remember, while applicants request funds for unique programs and are evaluated on their public services, funds received through CDF can be used to cover any administrative costs, such as staff salaries, space rentals, and insurance costs spent in the execution of the project, except for capital expenditures, government advocacy efforts, or fundraising. Next slide, please. So public access during fiscal 2026 is the key component of activities funded by CDF. The guidelines contain a longer list of examples, so definitely look there for that information. But here are a few examples of the kinds of activities CDF can fund. Creation of new work and/or restoration of existing work for public presentation. That last bit is the important part. It has to be for public presentation. We can also fund arts education programs, community-based cultural activities, services that assist New York City's artists and arts organizations, training programs, presentation of works in progress, virtual programs with a clear artistic service provided to New York City audiences. DCLA can fund any of these types of activities if the public access falls between July 1st, 2025 and June 30th, 2026, and within the 5 boroughs of New York City. Remember also that funding received via the Department of Cultural Affairs must be for publicly accessible activities that are cultural in nature. It's baked in, it's written on the tin. We do include the humanities and natural sciences in our definition of culture, but not physical fitness, social services, or general education, such as homework help. And if you have a question, please submit it via the Q&A function here, or email your program officer or the help desk if you want to get more clarity on the eligibility of something you're going to propose. Next slide, please. So keep in mind what we do not fund. Please do not ask DCLA to support activities outside of the city's fiscal year or outside of the 5 boroughs. It's an automatic non-starter. We expect you to fundraise, but we cannot fund you to do so. Again, capital projects, including equipment purchases and construction, are not eligible. They fall under a different unit at DCLA. And if you have questions about that kind of funding, you can email capitalrequest@culture.nyc.gov for information about the capital unit. That email is also in the chat. Lobbying or governmental advocacy can be helpful for organizations to receive funding from elected officials, but CDF funds may not be used towards those efforts. DCLA also does not fund proposals for internal capacity building. You must propose projects that provide services to the public. This also means we do not fund general operating support. Please do not ask for general operating support. Your CDF proposed projects cannot include activities funded by City Council initiatives administered through this agency, such as CASA or the Cultural Immigrant Initiative, as we mentioned earlier. And so please be sure not to include any of these ineligible items in your project description. Next slide, please. So you submitted your application. It's eligible, it's complete, it went to the panel. How is the panel going to evaluate it? They are evaluating your application on 3 criteria. 35% of your project's score, 35% of your score will be calculated on your application's evidence of public service and impact. That's the first criterion. Applications that score highly on this criterion are providing arts and/or cultural programming in the 5 boroughs of New York City during the grant period, with consideration toward accessibility, affordability, and equity. 35% of your score will be calculated on your application's evidence of organizational accountability. That's the second criterion. So if you want to score highly on this criterion, applications need to show that their organizations demonstrate accountability, sustainability, and the capacity to provide cultural programs that are accessible, equitable, realistic, and relevant to their mission, focus, and audiences served. And lastly, 30% of your score is calculated based on evidence of quality in the execution of your proposed cultural programs. Consideration is informed by a relative standard that is appropriate to the participants in those disciplines and genres, and not in comparison to any single standard of excellence. Please see the guidelines for a full description of the evaluative criteria. You'll also see that the application sections align closely with these evaluative criteria. Refer to the guidelines for more information about how the panelists use the different sections of the application to assess your application against the evaluative criteria. Next slide, please. So in this slide, you can see the minimum and maximum awards determined by panel score in each budget category. Don't worry about scribbling them down quickly. They are all in the guidelines and written down, so you can always go back and find them there. But we're showing them here just to sort of review this process of the fund allocation. So the competitive panel review will generate a final panel score percentile for each proposal. After DCLA's FY26 budget is adopted, available funding will be used to determine the percentage of applicants funded. And DCLA strives to continue to fund a high percentage of applicants. First-time grantees, defined as applicants that have not received a CDF baseline award in at least one of the last 6 fiscal years, are only eligible for a one-year $10,000 baseline award, regardless of budget size. Returning grantees will be awarded the minimum allocation in their budget category, plus additional funding determined by their panel score percentile. The total panel award will not exceed the maximum listed here. And please note that organizations with budgets under $25,000 are only eligible for a $10,000 award. That's the minimum and the maximum. And then additional funds may be added according to agency priorities post-adoption, again, available funding contingents. This includes targeted funding sources such as the Language Access Fund and the Disability Forward Fund. Next slide, please. So a little bit about multi-year awards. Note that the multi-year award policy did change for last year, and we're continuing on with that. So if you did not receive a CDF baseline award within any of the 3 prior fiscal years, that's 23, 24, or FY25, then you're eligible for a single year award. If you received at least a CDF baseline award within the last 3 fiscal years, you're eligible for a 3-year award. Recipients of 3-year awards must still submit a complete and eligible renewal application for the 2nd and 3rd out years of their required renewal. And there's a separate application form and deadline for those. If that's the case for you, you'll get notified of all of that. And renewal applications are not subject to panel review. So multi-year isn't something you choose or opt in or opt out of. It's basically a set criteria based on your situation, and you get it or you don't. Next slide, please. Okay, so we, in this last bit, reviewed eligibility and the guidelines, things that we can fund, criteria for evaluating the proposals, and fund allocation. So I'm going to pause again and look to see what questions have been flagged for me to answer. Turn my video back on for that. And let's see. Okay. Our fiscal year is the calendar year, January to December, but the DCLA fiscal year is July to June. Do we need to recreate our budget to reflect what we'll spend in CDF's fiscal year, covering the end of one of our years and the beginning of our next, or can we submit our annual budgets? Our end of year programming is funded with payments throughout our fiscal year. Okay, so this is a very common, and I think Claudia is going to talk about this a little bit when we get to that section of the application when she's takes over. But yes, you will need to give us both and. So in the section of the application where we ask you for your organization's budget, that's your whole organizational budget if you're an arts organization, that is going to be based on your fiscal year dates. And you're going to be able to tell us in the form the start and the start dates for your fiscal year. So we know when your fiscal year runs. The project budget needs to be for the project that you're proposing. And since the project that you're proposing has to occur within the city's fiscal year, which is the eligible grant period, then the project budget you give us has to align with the city's fiscal year. So there will necessarily sometimes be situations where, because of the difference in your fiscal year dates, you're going to have to explain how those numbers fit together. So there's information about that in the instructions, and I think we'll mention it later, but you're going to do your budget for your organization and or your year for the organization and the city's fiscal year for the project budget, because that has to be for the grant period. Oh, I skipped one, sorry. When we say the last 2 consecutive years, in this case, does that mean 24 and 25? That means 23 and 24. Because you have to have been in existence and having activity in FY23. So obviously you have to have been doing something in fiscal year 23 so that you've filed a 990 because that's the required baseline year. Let's see. Other questions? All right, someone's asking, how do we apply for the additional language access funds? Good question. You don't really technically apply for them separately, and I believe Claudia is going to talk about this later in the webinar. It is only available if there's additional funds added to our budget so that we can allocate them to that source. And there's a question in the application form that you can indicate you're interested in receiving that because you are doing something that would comport with the parameters of those fund sources. But I think Claudia is going to talk about that a little bit next in her section. Okay. Next question says, are organizations frequently funded for annual projects that are generally the same year after year? Yes, that is absolutely the case. Obviously, we have a lot of applicants and we have a lot of grantees, so we're funding all sorts of different types of things. We do fund organizations that are applying to us for something they do every year. They do the same project every year, so it's an annual project and that's funded. We also do fund organizations that do different types of things from year to year. And so every year that they apply, their project is something different or maybe slightly different. So both are eligible and possible, and we see both. But yes, we do see annual projects that are annual things that you might do every year. Can you clarify what you mean by arts organization? Well, I believe that we mean an organization that is main mission and primary mission is to perform work or serve the public in some way that in the discipline, in an artistic discipline or a discipline that is classified as the humanities. So I guess if you are doing work in one of the artistic disciplines, that's your main focus. And that's the purpose of your organization is to present that work, perform that work, teach that work, serve people who are artists or arts organizations, educate, anything that's like your focus is the arts and the humanities, then you're an arts organization. If you are the type of non-arts and culture organization that we're talking about, if that's maybe what you're kind of getting at, is an organization that maybe a common example is something like a settlement house, that their larger mission is many, many different types of things. They do job training skills. They're maybe doing housing, they're doing healthcare, but they also have an arts component to what they do. So if that's the case, then it's not their primary mission. So they're not an arts organization, but it is a component of what they do. So they're a non-arts and culture organization that does some arts programming. All right. Any other questions? take this one. So need clarification on $10,000 baseline. If we applied and were denied, we can still only ask $10,000, correct? So it depends on the situation, but I believe, as we mentioned, if you are a first-time grantee, so if even if you've applied before, but you haven't been funded before in at least one of the last 6 fiscal years, you are only eligible for a 1-year $10,000 baseline award. Yes. Okay. I think in the interest of time, I'm going to pause there. We'll keep answering your questions, but I'm going to pause there, turn off my camera, and turn it over to Claudia.
Thank you, Laudan. Hi, everyone. I'm Claudia Arzeno. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Director of Program Administration here at DCLA. And just as Audrey and Laudan did, I'll give you a visual description of myself. I am a Puerto Rican woman with shoulder-length, dark brown wavy hair, brown eyes. I'm wearing a black shirt, and I have the same DCLA background. I'm going to turn off my camera until the Q&A. The FY26 CDF application is a user-friendly online application that uses the Salesforce CRM system. The application accepts video and audio links as part of your background materials and more. All supplemental materials must be uploaded directly into the online form itself. If you encounter a technical issue, please submit the IT support form. This link can be found on our website. Next slide, please. This slide shows the login page for the CDF application portal found on the Grants for Organizations section of the DCLA website, www.nyc.gov/culture. For organizations that have never applied to the Department of Cultural Affairs for funding, users can register for a new account by clicking the Register New Account button. We will paste the link to the registration help guide in the chat. It can also be found on the DCLA website under About CDF Registration. Follow this guide for step-by-step instructions on how to set up an account for a new organization, add and remove primary users, and register for NYCID. Next slide, please. On this slide is a screenshot of the NYCID login page. This is the screen you will see when you launch the application from the DCLA website. Enter your email and password to access your CDF account. Our online security policies are aligned with NYCID, New York City's centralized public identity management system. New and returning users will use NYCID to log into their DCLA CDF account. For more information on registration and NYCID, please download the registration help guide from our website. Again, that link has been pasted into the chat. Next slide, please. After you have logged in, you will be taken to the grants management dashboard for your organization. This slide includes a screenshot of that page, which shows your contact name, the organization's name, a navigation toolbar on the left, and all currently open grant applications. The first step for every registered applicant is to review the user information in your organization's account for accuracy and completeness. You can view this information by clicking User Management on the left-hand navigation bar. It is critical for all organizations to keep their account profile and registration information current at all times. Please refer to the registration help guide for instructions on how to add, remove, and edit users. This portal is where all engagement with the CDF process will occur. Only your active users will receive correspondence, and the grants management dashboard will be Grant Central for all document management. Next slide, please. It is important to note that to complete your application, you must have identified a user as an executive director by checking the Executive Director checkbox in the User Management section here. You can see the cursor is pointing you to the box, and it's also has a big red oval around it. Next slide, please. This is a screenshot of the launch page of the CDF application. As you see, the application is in 5 sections, plus the final step section, each of which can be accessed by clicking the Get Started red button on the right. The application and its sections are designed to align with the evaluative criteria. You must complete the organization information section first, and you need to complete the first 5 sections before continuing to the final step section to submit your application. Some other things to remember. You will be logged out automatically after 30 minutes of inactivity. Save the page as you are working every few minutes, and please disable any pop-up blockers to make sure that you receive an alert prior to being logged out. The form does not automatically save. You will need to click Save at the top to save your application at any time, or click the Save and Next at the bottom to both save and navigate to the next page. Clicking Previous or Next at the top of the page will also save your work. Up to 5 users can work on separate sections of the application at once. However, multiple users cannot be working in the same section at the same time. Instructions for your responses will appear in a blue box below the question. Not all questions have instructions. Character count limits appear at the end of the question. Once you begin a section, it will be marked as in progress until complete. Clicking Exit will bring you back to the home screen. To complete a section, you need to click the Finish button at the end of the section. This will mark the section as complete on the home page. You can see a video demonstration of this next point on your screen. All sections remain editable until you submit the application. However, if you edit a complete section, it will change back to an in-progress status. Once you've made your edits, you can use the sidebar to go to the end and click Finish to mark it as complete again. So you see here that we are exiting this section, and the status appears as in progress. So you need to go back in and go to the end and then click the Finish button. And then you'll see that the status changes to complete. All questions with an asterisk are required. If the question doesn't apply to you, type 0 or NA. Do not submit your application in the 6th section until you are sure that the application is ready for submission. This is really important. You cannot change your application after hitting the Submit Application button. We cannot change it for you. You cannot change it. So be sure to review the entire application before submitting, especially since multiple users can work on it at once. So for example, if someone from your organization enters a text, staff will fill this in later, that will register as an answer to your question. So just go through the whole application before submitting it, because you don't want that to be the answer to one of your questions. Once you submit the application, the active users listed on your account will get a confirmation email, which contains a link to an optional post-application survey. Save this email for your records. If you do not receive the confirmation, check your junk mail folder and make sure that you actually submitted the application. Next slide, please. A few tips as you craft your project proposal. Remember that the focus of CDF support is artistic and cultural services to the public. Organizations may request support for one project, which should contain a level of detail that is responsive to all the criteria for funding, which again are public service and impact, organizational accountability, and quality. In determining the proposed programming and crafting the descriptions entered in this section, please be mindful of the available character limits and how best to present a clear, comprehensive description of all elements within the space provided. If your project contains multiple components, make sure they each have the requisite amount of detail. We look to the applicant to define its public and describe the access that it provides. it's up to you to clearly define the public that you are serving. Explain why your project is important and specify how it will serve the identified community. DCLA funds projects of both breadth and depth, those that reach a broad range of people, as well as those that provide a depth of service for a small number of people. Your public could be anything from 5 participants in a series of workshops to 200 people in an outdoor presentation to 1,000 New York City school children attending a concert. One of the ways to demonstrate public service and impact is to include the goals you have set for your proposed project in the project description, along with the evaluative methods that you plan to use to measure impact. If your organization has provided the same or similar services in the past, you may include metrics, quantitative and/or qualitative data to help highlight the program outcomes. We understand that some specifics might not be confirmed when the application is submitted. When this is the case, be sure to include as much detail as you can regarding what steps you will take and how you will make the decisions that will make the project a reality, including when key decisions will be made and who the key decision makers are. The how can be just as important as the what. Next slide, please. A few tips as you begin your application. Refer to the definitions and examples of the evaluative criteria provided in the guidelines. These criteria will be used by the panelists to assess your application, and your application must speak to them in detail. Each of the criteria include instructions to share your equity and accessibility activity and plans in terms of your public programming and your organizational structure. We recognize that every organization is at a particular point in this arc, and we expect you to accurately share your current state as well as your aspiration, including evidence of how you plan on achieving your goals. Be sure to include your organization's actual mission statement and ensure that your proposed project clearly fulfills that mission. Include as many details as you can about the audience currently served by your organization, as well as the audience that you intend to serve with your proposed project. Describe how you will reach the audience before, during, and after your program. Next slide, please. Also, give relevant examples by including previous activities that relate to the projects your organization is proposing. Don't include ineligible activities in your synopsis, project description, or project budget. This can hurt your score significantly. For example, if you're producing a play in New York City and then will be touring that play nationally following its run in New York City, we recommend that you leave the national run out of your project proposal. Instead, focus only on what you will be doing within the 5 boroughs in fiscal year 26. Including the context of the national tour may make it more difficult for panelists to evaluate your New York City impact and the eligibility of your project. If for some reason you must reference ineligible activity, be sure to clarify that the information is just for context and that you are not seeking funds for the ineligible activity. In response to the disability access question, highlight your accessibility measures that go beyond ADA compliance. You can include, but are not limited to, efforts to better accommodate the disability community, efforts to adapt program delivery for audiences with disabilities, or you might highlight collaborations or partnerships within the disability community. Please check the FY26 guidelines for more examples. And finally, be sure to use current language to describe your activities, demographics, and communities served. Think about using terms that are inclusive, asset-based, and people-first. Please refer to the FAQ document on our website for examples. A link can also be found in the chat. Next slide, please. $0 requests will not be reviewed by a panel and are ineligible for CDF baseline funds. That's really important. I will repeat that. $0 requests will not be reviewed by a panel and are ineligible for CDF baseline funds. Okay, so that being said, the process for entering your request amount has changed a little bit. Instead of your request amount populating from your project budget, You must now enter a figure in the request amount field in the project summary overview section, which will populate your budget form. Please make sure that you've reviewed this before you submit your application. The figure entered here is the amount you're requesting for this CDF fiscal year. Refer to the guidelines for information on appropriate request amounts for your budget size. Include any anticipated City Council member item funding that you expect will be administered by DCLA. Do not include City Council initiative funding in this field. The number you enter in this field will populate the Department of Cultural Affairs Cultural Development Fund CDF line in the project budget page. Next slide, please. A few tips for the presentation of your project. In this screen, you can see two identical texts. The one on the left includes paragraph breaks, and information is highlighted by the judicious use of capital letters. On the right is a dense paragraph peppered with ampersands and abbreviations, but containing exactly the same information. The one on the left allows the reader, the panelist, to find key information on the page. The other makes it far too difficult to do that, making it harder for panelists to read. Make sure that your text is easily legible. Use appropriate spacing and paragraph breaks, which only count as a single character. And note that some formatting tools, such as bold, italics, and underline, are unavailable in the application. If you copy and paste, the text may not appear as you entered it in a word processing program. You can use the gray Download PDF button found at the top of the page to preview what the text looks like and edit accordingly. Also, do not embed links in your narrative. We have designated space for links in the supplemental materials section of the application. Next slide, please. A few tips as you enter your budget figures and notes. The application requires budgets for your overall organization and for the specific project you're proposing. The organizational budget should reflect your fiscal year. The project budget should reflect the city's fiscal year, which is July 1st through June 30th. We suggest working on your budget offline first. You can use an Excel document or the budget worksheet we mentioned earlier. As a reminder, the application form times out after 30 minutes, so be sure to save. You don't want to get closed out in the middle of figuring out your budget. Again, you'll enter your CDF grant request amount in the request amount field in the project summary overview section. This figure will populate your project budget on the Department of Cultural Affairs CDF line. It does not populate the organizational budget, so be sure to confirm that the request amount aligns between your project and organizational budgets. DCLA cannot fund more than 75% of the total cost of a project. To be competitive for funding, the total request amount should be between the minimum and maximum award amount for your organization's budget category, as outlined in the guidelines. Be sure to list an actual request. Again, if you request $0, your application will be disqualified and will not be reviewed by the panelists. So make absolutely sure that you have entered a number before submitting your application. Received or projected City Council initiative income should not be listed in your project budget. As we discussed earlier, those awards must not overlap with your CDF programs. However, you should include those awards in your organizational budget. You can click the red budget overview button at the top of the organizational budget section to review the budgets next to each other. Make sure the budget notes are complete and thorough, and that they explain any apparent anomalies or discrepancies. Next slide, please. Following recommendations made in the Create NYC Cultural Plan, released in July 2017, the Language Access Fund, also referred to as LAF, and Disability Forward Fund, DFF, were launched to support both new and ongoing programmatic efforts to engage New Yorkers in these communities. When available, funding is provided for these initiatives. To be considered for LAF and/or DFF, you must describe your related activities in the project description section of your application. If you select in the application that yes, you're doing activity that comports with either LAF, DFF, or both, you'll be prompted to answer a further question summarizing the programming and indicating more information on the nature of the activity. You may copy-paste your response from your project description to respond to either of these questions. Review our guidelines if you would like to be considered and need more information. Next slide, please. A competitive application is comprehensive. The components should interrelate, make sense, and holistically describe both your organization and your proposed project. The evaluative criteria of public service and impact, organizational accountability, and quality should be reflected throughout your application, along with your commitment to access, equity, and inclusion. Think of these components as the cinnamon in your oatmeal raisin cookie, not the raisins. In other words, these criteria and values should permeate all aspects of your organization. Next slide, please. As you think about how to tell the story of your organization and project, it might also be helpful to note that the order of the application content seen by panelists differs slightly from how you will enter it online. On this slide and the next are screenshots of the panelist view. We are sharing these so that you can see how the information is presented to the panelists. Next slide, please. To see how the panelists will receive your application information, please refer to the sample panelist view document in the application resources section of our application webpage. A link can also be found in the chat. Next slide, please. Applicants must submit programmatic background materials in a single PDF file of no more than 10 pages. Your programmatic background materials should establish your arts and cultural activity and public engagement over the last 2 to 3 years. Materials should relate to your proposed project as much as possible. Your submission will be shared with panelists and will contribute to the evaluation of your proposal. Programmatic background materials should provide a sense of your proposed project and the people involved, including audiences. You may include, but are not limited to, materials that demonstrate programmatic activity, marketing and audience engagement, or educational activity. Please refer to the fiscal year 26 guidelines for examples. Do not include hyperlinks, as panelists are instructed to only review what is in the PDF. So if you include hyperlinks, we will tell the panelists to not click on them, so don't do it. Next slide, please. In addition, you may share up to 2 work samples. Providing a work sample is optional, and you will not be penalized if you do not include one. The work samples are an additional opportunity to demonstrate to panelists the mission-based work that you do and may include up to 2 minutes of audio-visual recordings, up to 2 pages of photo documentation, up to 2 pages of manuscripts and writing samples. Do not include folders or files for download on cloud-based storage platforms such as Dropbox or Google Drive. Panelists are instructed not to review these. Panelists will also be instructed not to peruse general organizational websites or social media pages. Do not include URLs that are not work samples. Links to materials must be publicly accessible and not password protected through 2025. Please see the guidelines for descriptions of appropriate work samples. Next slide, please. If your organization is funded, notification will take place after the grant period has begun. This year, you will not know if you have been awarded funds likely until late fall or early winter, even for programs that take place in the summer. So please plan accordingly. We expect each grantee to move forward with the activities proposed, regardless of the size of the DCLA award or the timing of our payments. Funds may not move as swiftly as you or we would like, and we appreciate your understanding. Generally, 80% is paid as early in the fiscal year as possible, and the remaining 20% is paid out only upon completion of services and approval of final reports. In some years, there were budget adjustments mid-year that increased or decreased awards slightly. Those adjustments are made when we issue final payments. Next slide, please. Funded applicants are expected to have adequate insurance to cover their activities. We expect you to be ADA compliant. Funded organizations must also follow DCLA's policy for acknowledging the receipt of these funds by including the DCLA logo and appropriate credit language in digital and printed materials. Next slide, please. I want to give you one last reminder that everything we just covered needs to be submitted by 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Thursday, May 8th, 2025, to meet the application deadline and be eligible for funding. Remember, this is the last day that you could submit, not the first day, the last day. Do not wait until the last minute. We'll answer some of the remaining questions that came in via the Q&A during the presentation now. So if you have any general questions at this time, please do submit them. Okay, let's see. Suppose we have done a similar project before, but using funds we have raised. It would be amazing if we could get a grant award to support this initiative. Is this a project we could use to apply? If the project is cultural in nature, if it takes place in New York City during the fiscal year, then yes, you could apply for a project that you have done before that you have used funds that are non-DCLA funds to fund in the past. We are first-time applicants, so we will apply for the baseline amount of $10,000. We also qualify for DFF. Is the money's award still capped at, it says $1,000, but I assume it means $10,000. The $10,000 refers to your baseline award. DFF and LAF, if we have the funds for it this year, which again, we won't know until the budget is adopted, if we have the funds for it, is additional to that baseline award. So if you score highly enough to receive a baseline award and then you are also awarded DFF, you would receive more than $10,000. Will there be a contract that we need to sign before getting at our initial funding, 80%, or just signing of a simple document accepting the grant? So everyone that receives a CDF award will need to sign and date a grant agreement before receiving the 80%, as well as some other documents, which will vary depending on your grant award size. Do we need to share how we'll recognize DCLA's logo, where it will be, etc.? If you are awarded CDF funding, you will get some funding materials instructions that include how to get the DCLA logo, what it looks like, and everything that you will need. If we completed a multi-year project this year, are we applying for a new multi-year project now? I want to clarify whether you mean that your project was over a few years or whether you're coming out of a 3-year award. If you had a grant, a multi-year award that was, say, fiscal year 23 through fiscal year 25, then you need to fill out this application by May 8th in order to be considered for funding. Your project that you will be applying for is just for this fiscal year. If you score highly enough to be funded and you've been funded in the past 3 years, you will receive a 3-year award. And then you will fill out renewal applications in year 2 and year 3 with your project for that particular year. Can funds be used primarily for staff and teaching artists? Yes, you can use your funds to pay staff, teaching artists, any costs associated with your program, as long as it's not capital expenditures, fundraising efforts, or lobbying efforts. Let's see. Is there a final report due for fiscal year 25 if we are wrapping a 3-year award in addition to submitting a new application for FY 26? Yes, there will be a final report for fiscal year 25. There is a final report after every fiscal year. The final report will be released most likely this summer and will be due on August 1st. Do you have a cap on the number of first-time applicants you award? We do not have a cap. It really depends on how an applicant scores. That is how funding is determined. Our organization provides training for artists who perform in New York City and beyond. How do you define New York City artists? What makes them eligible as a program beneficiary? So you can only really apply for the portion of the program that is taking place in New York City. If your program is taking place somewhere outside of New York City, if they are performing outside of New York City, that portion of your program is not eligible for funding. But if the artists are, say, for example, you have a theater show that you're producing and your actors are coming from outside of New York City, but the theater production is here in New York City, you could use your funds to pay those artists. Okay, it looks like that's it for questions. If those are all the questions, I want to say thank you again to the Kaufman Music Center for letting us use their video featuring Imani Winds at the beginning of this presentation. Thank you again for all of you for attending the FY26 CDF webinar. Once you've completed your application, please be sure to fill out our application survey. A link will be provided in the confirmation email you receive after your application is submitted. We really value your feedback on your experience, so if you have the time to fill that out, we appreciate it. And final reminders, we have a list of tools on our website that you should definitely use that are linked here again in the chat. This session was recorded and will be linked on our website. The video has closed captions that can be translated into different languages in the YouTube interface. Please look for the FAQs on our website. Look for updates in our weekly reminder emails during the open application period. One more shout out to the budget and application worksheets. Please use them. They are really helpful. There's a panelist view sample on our website. We also have webinars on April 14th, April 24th, and May 1st. If you need further clarification, you can always participate in the virtual office hours on April 17th at 12:30 p.m. You can RSVP to the office hours through the link on our website. And there are also registration links for the webinars on our website. So if you feel like attending another webinar after today, please click on one of those RSVP links and register. And if you need any other support, please contact your program officer or the help desk email, cdfhelpdesk@culture.nyc.gov. Thank you again all so much for participating in today's webinar.